Unown is a pretty interesting Pokemon, especially for the TCG, as more Unown cards have been printed than any other Pokemon aside from Pikachu, with the total currently standing at 90 Unown cards. But Unown all have relatively low HP, and they can only use one attack, much like their in-game counterparts, being limited to just hidden power. However, the usefulness of Unown cards depends on what their Pokemon power is. Sometimes those powers require multiple Unowns to be together on the bench, spelling out a certain word to get a certain effect. Sometimes the effects only work on other Unown cards, and sometimes they just have general effects for the entire playing field. And the combination of these different types of effects could make for very interesting, very deep gameplay, if not for one rule. And that is printed on Neo Unown cards, stating that only 4 Unown cards can be used in a deck, regardless of which letters they are. So with that rule in place, there's no hope of an all Unown alphabet soup style deck where you have 20 different effects available for use that layer and stack on top of each other. Instead, you can put 4. You can put 4 Unown in a deck, which is exactly what I have done here. This deck is completely structured around 4 Unown cards, and I was really hesitant on whether or not to actually do an upload for this deck, but I thought, to hell with it. We're at the end of Base Neo, which is a format dominated by coin flips, so why not use this Unown deck as the opportunity for the ultimate coin flip deck? If you can hit heads on coin flips, this is the deck for you. If not, and you're like me and you can't hit a single positive coin flip, then just enjoy the video. So as you know from the title of the video, the first Unown that will be featured in this deck is Unown Q, with the Quicken power, where you can flip a coin, and if heads, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to any of your Unown cards next turn, which is pretty huge. That gives you another turn to attack, in which you will be utilizing Unown A's Anger Pokemon power, where you do 10 more damage for each damage counter that is on Unown A. And the last Unown is probably the most important, and that's why we'll be running 2 copies of Unown X. Whenever you attack with a hidden power from an Unown, you flip a coin until you get tails, and the hidden power being used will deal 10 more damage for each head you hit. So you're beginning to see why this is a huge coin flip deck. And then I'm also including 2 copies of Mr. Mime, just in case your Unown Q gets prized. You still have a little bit of a backup to where you can stall out for a couple turns if you're up against a deck like Steelix or Sneasel that's only dealing really high damage. That's where Mr. Mime can come in and be a little bit of a savior for this deck. And because there's not any real fixed damage in this deck unless you count the 10 base power of hidden power, then that also makes it uncertain if you're going to be able to knock out a Pokemon. You may be able to deal a big chunk of damage on there, but not completely OHKO it or anything. And so Mr. Mime can come in and basically clean up with Meditate. As long as you've dealt at least half of their HP to them, Mr. Mime can come in and get that knockout for you. And that's it for the Pokemon. It seems pretty crazy to only have 6 Pokemon in this deck, but I tried running it with Cleffa, and it really just slowed it down and kind of made the deck worse and more susceptible. So that's why there's 3 copies of Professor Elm, just to make up for the lack of Cleffa. And that gives you a lot more leeway with trainers and things you can accomplish with trainer cards, having such a low Pokemon count and such a low energy count, because you only need 1 energy for hidden power anyway. So full playset of Ruin Wall, which is going to let you search out those Unown very quickly. Same thing for Good Manners. You're almost never going to have a basic Pokemon in your hand. If you do, all you got to do is play it down to the bench where it belongs anyway, and Good Manners is going to let you search out any other basic. So you're basically running 8 copies of Ruin Wall in this deck with Good Manners. Focus Band is essential because these Unown have such low HP. Especially for fully utilizing Unown A, Focus Band can be great, leaving it with only 10 HP. That way, all of your hidden powers are going to deal a base power of 40. But again, that is highly contingent on hitting the right coin flips for Focus Band. And in order for this deck to hit its maximum efficiency, you do have to control the game board a little bit. So I'm going to include the full Trapper build in here. Now, a lot of people said Trapper was dead with base Neo because Cleffa could pretty much just fix whatever it did. But that's not always the case. If you can hit your opponent hard enough or in the middle of the game when their Cleffas are pretty much out of commission, it actually works pretty well. So, Imposter Oak's Revenge, if you don't know, you discard a card from your hand, your opponent has to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. That's when you play Rocket's Trap, where if you hit the coin flip, then you get to choose 3 cards at random from your opponent's hand to discard, leaving them with only 1 card in their hand, which is completely devastating if you don't have a card like Professor Elm or Cleffa to rely on to replenish your hand. And with only 1 card in their hand, you can then use Rocket's Sneak Attack to look at their hand, and if that's a trainer card, you send that right back to their deck too, and they have nothing. But this is also a great defense against any number of trainer cards that can help your opponent get a faster setup. Anything to disrupt the gameplay and let you get off those hidden powers for only 1 energy. Because there's not a lot of setup required here. You really are just searching your deck out for 3 cards, laying them down, and then attacking for 1 energy. To further support the Trapper build, I've got 3 copies of Last in this deck, just in case there are some trainers that you know your opponent has, you don't want them to play. You can go ahead and play all the trainers you want from your hand. You can unload a full Trapper setup from your hand, but just say you don't hit the coin flip for Rocket's Trap, you can just play a Last instead, and you're still getting rid of a lot of cards in your opponent's hand. Scoop Up's going to be really important for getting those Unown that have survived a focus band right back into your hand. That way you can just lay them back down, potentially get another focus band on there, and essentially reset part of the QAXX Unown setup in 1 turn. And you can't have this much room for disruption trainers and not include full playsets of energy removal and super energy removal, because, like I said, Unown's attacking for 1 energy. It's not gonna hurt you at all to have to discard one of those for super energy removal, but this could be really devastating for your opponent if they're not able to get energy on their Pokemon, if they're not able to keep cards in their hand, and your setup is so simple that it only requires 3 basic Pokemon and 1 energy, then that's where the full advantage of this deck really comes through. 3 copies of Nightly Garbage Run, because you do have so few basic Pokemon and so few basic energy. If you lose even one of those, it can be really crucial and important to get that right back into your deck. That way you can utilize it out of your deck as fast as possible and regain that setup. And Mr. Mime can be a great help in stalling out for a few turns while you use Garbage Run and fish those cards right back out of your deck. 2 copies of Resistance Gem, more so as a counter gem to things just like Energy Stadium or Chaos Gem, but also if you run into a lot of normal types like your Chanseys and your Wigglytuffs and your Lickitungs, you're going to need all the help you can get, because with a 30 resistance against these Unown, you're not really going to be able to do anything. So Resistance Gem is needed to even begin to tackle those big, bulky normal types. I found with this deck that the Unown that I usually wanted attacking, that I wanted to start the game with, was Unown A, because early game you could bait your opponent into putting 1 or 2 damage counters on there and really helping out with that anger ability, but really any Unown as an attacker works. If you don't like the QAXX combo of Unown, you do have some options to swap in for that second Unown X. Unown Y will allow you to pull a Psychic Energy straight out of your deck and attach to one of your Unown. Unown B will allow you to move a damage counter off of another Unown onto Unown B, although this is very, very situational and not typically very useful for just an Unown deck. Unown E would basically serve as just another copy of Imposter Oak's Revenge, as it basically does the exact same thing, except it only goes into effect when you play it from your hand, so the amount of times you would actually be able to utilize it are limited. Unown N and D reduce the amount of damage done by normal and dark types respectively, so either of these is only a really good addition to the deck if you know for sure that you're going to be up against those Pokemon. So it's more of really like a sideboard Unown for this deck. If you want to add some draw power to the deck, the Erica Trainer is a great addition, and it works really well with the Trapper combo, as it doesn't matter if your opponent's able to draw 3 cards as well. If you're about to hit them with a Imposter Oak's Revenge anyway, this actually may work better, as you can allow your opponent to get more trainers into their hand before you hit them with a Lass or a Rocket Sneak Attack too. Fossil Muck makes this deck absolutely pointless, so in order to deal with that, if you know you're going to be up against Muck, put some Gust of Wind into this deck, because those Unown can actually OHKO Grimers, one of the few decks that can consistently do that. So Gust of Wind is going to help you pull out those Grimers and go ahead and knock them out before they can get evolved up and ruin your deck. If you want to accelerate Unown A's Anger Pokemon power, a great way to do that is to include a playset of Rainbow Energy, because when you attach that onto Unown A, that's going to go ahead and place 1 damage counter, giving you an automatic plus 10 to all of your hidden powers. But the downside is that you can't really retrieve these with Nightly Garbage Run, so your trainer build may need to be slightly adjusted to accommodate the Rainbow Energy. So this was my take on the Alphabet Soup deck. If you guys have better ways or more favorable ways that you like to play Unown decks, let me know down in the comments. This is definitely more of an experimental, just for fun deck, as it does rely so heavily on coin flips. Stay tuned to the channel for more vintage Pokemon TCG content. If you want to find me on the socials, I will link all of those down in the description. Until next time, bye.